In this episode, we sit down with pathfinding coach and Bat Out of Hell founder, Hillary Spiritos, a woman who truly understands what it means to pivot with purpose. Hillary shares her journey from higher education and corporate life into coaching young adults, offering down-to-earth strategies for finding direction, embracing change, and learning to trust your inner voice. If you've been feeling stuck, stretched thin, or out of alignment, Hillary brings a refreshing mix of empathy, adaptability, and resilience. Her message is a powerful reminder you're not behind, you're not off track even. You are right on time. While this conversation is geared toward young adults, the wisdom shared here applies to all of us. I encourage you to listen with a young person in your life or share it with one who's searching, questioning, or trying to find their footing. This is definitely one worth passing along. Stay tuned. The episode starts right after this. And as always, thank you for listening.
So much for listening to this episode of Earrings Off. We want to invite you to subscribe, rate, and leave us a review. You can find us on Facebook at Earrings Off Podcast and on Instagram at The Earrings Off Podcast.
Welcome to Earrings Off. I'm Lou.
And I'm Teresa. Let's get started.
Well, we have with us today, to our delight, Hillary Spiritos. Welcome, Hillary, to Earrings Off.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to talk to you.
Okay, well, great. We're excited about our conversation. So, Hillary, let's talk about your signature method, Aligned and Alive. It helps young adults overcome fear and imposter syndrome. What inspired you to create this framework, and how does it work in practice?
Thanks for asking. Aligned and Alive works as such. It's a 3-month program, and the first month is getting to dig into who you are, what you value, and what you want your life to look like, really and honestly. Because for this process to work, for this work to work, you need to be able to be brutally honest and get deep into it. The second month is figuring out what's blocking you and what fears are blocking you from creating and living that life that you say you want to live. And then the third month is reimagining and reframing what we spoke about in the beginning, because oftentimes when you dig a little bit deeper and dig into your fears, those change, but then also creating an actionable and strategic plan so that you can move forward. And there are follow-up sessions to make sure you feel secure and that you're comfortable moving forward. And so all of that to say, I believe that it is our fears that block us from creating the life we imagine and the life we want to live. A lot of that comes from our childhood. It's a lot of what protects us as children, and the defense mechanisms we develop is what ultimately blocks us and protects us and stops us from living the lives we want to live. So the key is to really figure out who you think you are and what you want your life to look like, but then dig into the meat of the matter, which is what's blocking you. The fears are unconscious and they're developed in childhood, and until you own them and recognize where they come from and understand their impact that you have on your daily adult life, that you're at the mercy of them. And so that's really how we get into how to create the life you want to live, because how you decide, this is how to listen to my inner voice, this is what I really want, and this is how to get through what I'm afraid of.
Okay, all right.
You talk about helping people redefine success beyond the traditional path, okay? What do you think most college grads get wrong about what success is supposed to look like?
Well, before you answer, Hillary, I can say what I got wrong was that my undergrad, I probably changed majors about 5 times. I was sort of a career student there for a while. But anyway, that's not what we're talking about, Hillary.
Well, I mean, actually, that's a great example, because I also changed my major. I actually changed my major in my junior year, and I was actually met with some mixed emotions about
Yeah.
me changing my
Yeah.
major, and
Yeah.
I don't know if everyone in my family or my friends too, but mostly family, like I don't know if they understood what I wanted to do, how I was going to make that work, how I was going, like what that meant. And
Yeah.
so I think, so much of what we think success is comes from these lessons that we're taught, right? So, and these stories that we're told. So a
Right.
lot of it
Right.
has to do with maybe we overheard something when we were younger or as we were growing up that our parents said, or maybe we saw something, or maybe it was unconscious or subconscious, like under the table, not
Mm-hmm.
really said out loud, but maybe it was like taught to us in some way, or we took it in. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think what's really important is to recognize what you said in the question, which was like, what is success supposed to look like? What do we get wrong about that? And it's like, it's not supposed to look like anything. That's the question, right? It's like,
Mm-hmm.
what does it mean to you?
Right. Right.
And how it looks to you might not resonate with somebody else, might not make sense to somebody else. You might prioritize something in a different order than somebody else might. Hopefully, it also keeps evolving. So I think something we get sticky with, I don't want to say get wrong about success,
Mm-hmm.
but something that we get into the weeds about is like, and a lot of things I hear from my clients is like, once I get this answer, like then I've figured it out and
Mm-hmm.
I'm done for, I don't need to figure anything else out. It's actually like this keeps evolving. What you think, what you want, your goals, they keep evolving. And it's really about developing the skills and tools to like listen to yourself, be okay with discomfort, be okay with standing alone, be okay with sitting in the unknown until you figure it out, and then go after what you want,
Yeah.
regardless of what the outside world is telling you is not okay, is not good enough, is not whatever. Like, we want you to learn to live a authentic,
Mm-hmm.
full life. And the only way you're really going to do that is by defining success and failure and like courage and all of that for yourself.
How hard is that in the day and age of social media? How much of that is influencing, you think, the young people? And is that why they're having such a hard time with these definitions?
And Hillary, when you answer that, could you talk a little bit about what do you do to tune out that noise and sort of listen to your inner voice?
Social media is huge. It is something that previous generations haven't had to
Mhm.
think about. This idea of trying to figure out what your understanding of success is isn't new. We've all had to try to figure out what our own values are and like what we want in our lives, and that's always going to be the case, and like maybe it's different than what your parents wanted, and it's all that's a human thing regardless of the generation that you're living in or the time that you're living in. But social media is a tool that I think can be beneficial and can be used in a positive way, but I also think as a it serves as a way to feel like you're never enough and you're
Mhm.
never doing enough because you're always in competition or comparison with other people. I don't think that's a race you could ever win. And I also think it's just one, it's never a race you're going to win. It's always unfulfilling. It's always going to make you feel like you're not doing enough in some way. But I also think it serves to get you outside of yourself, and it really doesn't help you look inward and figure out what the answers are for yourself. So,
Mhm.
ooh, that person looks like they're traveling all over the world and they're making millions of dollars and they're what and but like maybe what you really would find successful is like building a community, building a home, building a family that you want. Like maybe that's not something that's even a value to you. Maybe you want to volunteer your time and like create just like this lovely community for yourself here where you're living. Like I do think that community can be built on social media. I do think that there are authenticity is being valued. I do think there are people who are showing like this is what I look like without Photoshop. Like I do think
Mhm.
there are things that are beneficial.
Mhm.
I do think it's important to recognize, and this is what I do with my clients, is like recognize what you're using it for and the intention of it. So are you looking for connection? Are you looking for inspiration? Are you
Mm-hmm.
looking for just time to like you have time in between whatever you're doing and you're doing it mindlessly? Like what are you hoping to get out of it? How does it make you feel? I think a lot of my clients realize when they think about it, or even if they're not really conscious of it, know that it doesn't make them feel very good to just like mindlessly scroll through this and compare themselves. It's important to realize that like it's not a neutral platform. It's optimized for your engagement. It's preaching to the choir. And it's going to show you, it's like only gets smaller. Like it only shows you more and more of like what you believe and what you know. And you are training yourself to not be able to engage with different perspectives. You're training yourself to not be able to think about different things in different ways. You're trained like, and so I think I try to be very clear with my clients and I work with students in higher education as well. Like we want to avoid passive consumption and we want to make sure to try to use it as a tool if that is
Mm-hmm.
what we want to do and be really cognizant of it. And also
Right.
just recognize like it's not a substitute for in-person engagement and like
Right.
relationships.
Right.
And we're living in a loneliness epidemic. And I think that is part of the reason of that. And so I think more and more people actually are realizing that it's not something they want to engage with or it doesn't make them feel good, but I think they don't know how to
Mm-hmm.
break that cycle. And that's what helps people do.
Okay, that's great because what I hear you saying, Hillary, is to be more intentional and be selective about what you allow in terms of going in with reference to social media, what you're exposed to. So, Hillary, why do you believe the 20s and 30s are such a pivotal and misunderstood chapter of life? And how can someone reclaim these years, especially if they feel lost or behind?
I think that's a spectacular question. And I also think it's a large question, right? Because a lot of times we hear the younger generations being belittled or not really taken seriously. And I think that is true kind of in every generation, but I do think there is something different that is going on in how we treat our young people today. And I do think there are real significant changes that are making it harder in some ways to be a young adult today. But I think it's a pivotal time because it's a time of firsts, it's a time of foundational experiences, of like you are learning emotional and practical groundwork and framework of yourself. The brain is still developing and you're learning emotional regulation. I also think because it's a time of first, the stakes feel really high.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes, like, and again, this is maybe artificial, but there are cultural milestones or societal milestones that we feel like we should be hitting.
Mm-hmm.
Um, by the time we're certain ages, like the
Right.
20s are the time that we should like figure something out. But then by the time we're 25 or 30 or whatever, we need to like know
Mm-hmm.
everything by then. Um, or even like by the time you graduate college or like picking your major, exactly. Like you should be able to do that when you're 18, right?
Right.
Like that's
Right.
so
Yeah.
and then I also think like exactly it's really peak social comparison time. And I think that also just jumping back to social media for a second, I think it kind of starts young, right? Like now that we know what it is, I think maybe I would call upon parents of younger children to think about how they regulate their screen time and engage with social media with their young children. Because the 20s is like in your teens are a real social comparison time. You're really thinking about how you look to somebody else and what
Mm-hmm.
they're doing. And so it's just a real time of exploration and anxiety and confusion and
Mm-hmm.
personal growth and development happens at that time. And it's a lot of invisible work that you like that maybe isn't seen on the surface, but your insides are all over the place, right? And in many ways, I think it's misunderstood because like we want our lives to look like a movie or how we've seen it or how we see it on social media, and we think there's a way it should progress, and it's we think that life is linear, and we
Mhm.
think that it should keep going, and we should figure out and like gain more and more money or get more and more like aware of what we who we are and get more and more things, and that's just not how it works. It's actually messy. You're going to reinvent and pivot yourselves like over and over again. I think we need to kind of like get things immediately. And I think that's a thing to recognize is like things, it's just like it doesn't happen that way. And sometimes things take time and we have to be more intentional and growth is lasting. It's a process. And I think what's really important in the work that I do is like this recognition that we're like, oh, we just talked to somebody and we'll figure it out. But actually, it's continuing to remind yourself that these things are true and like that you're figuring it out and taking the time with it and all of that stuff.
Mhm. Mhm.
And not to mention the fact that, I mean, I feel like I'm talking a lot, but not to mention the fact that you are, again, talked about in the media or by adults in many ways about like being lazy or not wanting to work or not whatever. And I think what's so great about this population of people is like they're not okay with the fact that this is like the idea of this is always how it's always been done.
Mhm.
And there's so many systems that are broken. So it's really important that like we have people like that who are
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
I'm not gonna, just because you think I'm lazy or don't want to work, like the corporate system, the idea of careers, this whole thing is broken. So I think that's really important and often misunderstood.
Mhm. Okay.
And then I'll just say about the reclaiming, like redefine the timeline, normalize pivots and starting over, separate your identity from your output. That's huge. Recognize that you are not your work, you are not your job. That's not where you get value. Focus on building skills and understanding who you are. You can do that. You can do all these things at any age, but we can
Mhm.
start your life off right and like really, I think it is harder when you're looking back on your life and realizing that you would have liked to have done something differently. Learn the skills to like recognize that this isn't where I want to be and be okay with pivoting. Try things, figure it out, like invest in your relationships. There are so many amazing ways to like really like get in it, really
Mhm.
get into your life
Mhm.
fully because I think sometimes we're afraid of making a mistake or afraid of how it looks to somebody else and we stay on the sidelines.
Okay. Thank you.
You've worked in higher ed and corporate. How have those experiences shaped your approach to coaching young adults today?
I think what's really exciting about this time and university in general, but also just this time is like it's a time of, as I said, a time of questions and exploration and uncertainty and possibility. And I think working with young adults in university has also like it calls for empathy and flexibility and understanding. And I think that these are things that I absolutely bring to the table. And so working in this what could be turbulent times for young adults with all the things that we've spoken about before has given me and really like solidified these skills that I have.
Mhm.
Um, I also think in both places, like being in corporate and in universities, being in these spaces allows me to really be up to date with what young people are dealing with.
Mhm.
So I think I offer a space that is a near peer so that young adults can really talk to somebody who like knows what they're going
Mhm.
through and has been
Yeah.
through it and knows what like the tips and tricks and tools to get like closer to what you want your life to look like because I think oftentimes we want to speak to our parents and it's just a different world that we're living in
Mhm.
now. I think in all of these areas, I have seen people from different backgrounds and different experiences. And I think what it shows is that I've pivoted in my own life and can nav and know how to navigate, like figure out, and I've been able to figure out what I want and like how to get to a different destination. And I think these are all evidence that once you figure out like who you are and listen to your voice, you can kind of figure out what you want and make that happen. And I think it's really important to know that like I'm helping people figure out and build those skills for themselves. It's just a really exciting time, but I've been in all these different industries, so I'm able to recognize like what's important, what's necessary. If somebody wants to work in one of these industries, we can talk about that. So like I offer just like a more well-rounded perspective.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So, Hillary, you've referenced your coaching company, Bat Out of Hell, which I have to tell you, I love that name.
Thank you.
What does the name represent, and what kind of transformation do clients typically experience through your programs? Especially talk to us a bit, Hillary, about resilience and how you're helping your clients build it.
I'm not a one size fits all person or coach, and so I wanted a name that was a bit left of center,
Yeah.
a bit rock and roll, if you
Yeah.
will, just a
I
bit
love
like,
it. Yeah.
yeah. And I also think I've always actually really dug bats. Like I really resonate with them and
Mhm.
feel a kinship with them because they are highly perceptive, empathetic, adaptable creatures
Mhm.
that spend a lot of their time upside down. So they're seeing the world from a different perspective. And they symbolize transformation, rebirth, the coming out of the old and into the new, like out of the darkness and into the light, and all of that stuff I really think is important imagery to and like a representation of what I think my clients go through. Um, and resilience is interesting. I think resilience is huge. I think it might be one of the most important aspects or tools or parts of yourself that you can develop
Mhm.
because as I've said before, like life doesn't always work out the way you want it to. You don't
Mhm.
always get what you want. You don't always know exactly what you want. Also, I think it's important to recognize that security in various ways is kind of an illusion. Like you might lose your job, one of your parents might get sick,
Mhm.
like you might break up with somebody, you might have to move somewhere. Like, so it is important to build the skills and tools within yourself to know I can pick myself up. I can figure it out because I trust myself. I have the grit, I have the self-trust, I have the self-reliance to like and to deal with whatever life throws my way. And the more you do it, the easier it gets. And I also think that it's really important because I think that as young adults, like we often or people often rely on what I like it's precedent. So like I've done this kind of thing before,
Mhm.
so I'm capable of doing it again. I know I can survive this kind of thing again. But what's tricky about young adults is like they don't necessarily have or see the precedent that like in the
Mhm.
things that they've done previously, because
Mhm.
again, this is a time of firsts.
Mhm.
But what I help my clients do is recognize how they've had used those tools and developed those tools and the experiences they've had so that they can lean on those. Because I often think it's so easy to oh, to dismiss it and not realize the weight of the things that we go through, especially as young adults. I think we tend
Right.
to
Yeah.
belittle it.
Hmm. Okay.
If a young adult is listening right now and feeling stuck or unsure of their next move, what's the very first step you'd encourage them to take?
I think I would suggest asking yourself what part of your life feels out of alignment
Mm-hmm.
and get clear on what aspects of your life do you like and are you enjoying and do you want to keep, and what aspects of yourself feel like it's grating against what you might want your life to look like or the person you want to be. And you don't have to have the answers and you don't have to have the whole plan or know exactly what's going to happen, and you don't need to make a decision immediately, but acknowledging that there's something here that isn't matching who I am or what I'm becoming is important and huge. And that's the first step of trying to figure it out, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is starting that excavation and starting mining for what you really want. And I think it's also really important to look inward. So before you ask your friends, before you ask your family, before you look at what other people are doing on social media, we want to sit in it or like take a walk or do it, but really just like think internally and give yourself the time and space to do that, because you're the one who's going to have to live with your life and your choices. And you don't want to abdicate that responsibility to somebody else, because then you will look back and think, oh, that's actually not what I wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I would try to, and I would say, like, try to be as non-judgmental of yourself as possible. So if you're like, oh, I really want to do this, and then immediately think to yourself, oh, but somebody will, that's not good enough, or somebody won't say, hear that all the time. Like a client will say something and then they'll say, oh, that's not good enough, or that's not, like, nobody else will think that's cool, or that won't make me enough money, or whatever. Like, these are all well, the money thing is a consideration, but we want to be as non-judgmental of ourselves as possible so that we can really get honest, and then we can try to figure out how to make that work. And so that's where forward momentum and movement. I do feel like it's helpful and important to talk to somebody while doing this work, because you can do it on your own. It might just take longer, and you might not be able to get into all the cracks and crevices and ask yourself the questions that need to be asked. But I would first say, take stock and think
Mm-hmm.
about, like, what aspect might feel like it's not in place right now.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Okay.
Well,
That's
Hillary,
good.
thank you so much for sharing information, particularly for the young adults in our audience and the people that love them, because I see this information is translating across all barriers because it's very important. So thank you. Do you have any parting words for our audience, Hillary?
Yeah, I would like to say that we have this idea, and we've touched on this, that, like, this idea of being behind, and it's just something that is so constant with
Mm-hmm.
clients and young adults that I hear. You are exactly where you're supposed to be, and all of the things that you have gone through have gotten you to this point that you could potentially start doing the work. Like, you could not have done it before, and so you think, oh, I should have done this earlier. It was not possible for you to do it earlier, and all you did was made the best decision with all the information that you had at the time. And just, like, try to be as kind to yourself, and being your own best friend is a real thing.
Mm-hmm.
um so I just like to say that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, and if you're interested in talking and potentially working with me, my website is batoutahell.net, and my Instagram and TikTok are bat.outa_hell.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll put those in the show notes. But
Mm-hmm.
you can connect with me on either of those mediums. And we can either set up a time to potentially work together, or we can have a consultation call just to learn more about me and the work that I do, and see if it's a good fit.
Mm-hmm.
Because again, you have to be with somebody who you feel able to be open with, and and comfortable with, and
Right.
and wanting to have a relationship with, because otherwise this isn't going to work. But it's a really exciting time. I hope people feel like, while this might feel daunting, it's like, the work doesn't have to be really upsetting. The work doesn't have to be really dark, but it's also like, it will set you up for success and living a life that you want in the future.
Okay. All right. Thank you again, Hillary, for joining us here at Earrings Off. We certainly wish you all the best. Take good care.
Thank you.